Police sirens sliced through the heavy July air in Reno that afternoon. I'm Joanna Myers, 35, standing frozen as two officers loomed over my 7-year-old daughter, her small hands clutching wooden blocks, tears streaking down her cheeks. My sister-in-law's voice pierced the chaos, sharp and furious. She hurt my son. Arrest her. My heart stopped. My husband gripped my hand, his knuckles white. I stared at my daughter. Her sobs cut deeper than the accusations flying around us. What had happened? Just hours earlier, we'd been at my grandfather's backyard gathering laughter, barely concealing the tension simmering beneath the surface. Then came the accusation, sudden and shattering. My sister-in-law pointed, her face contorted with rage, claiming my daughter had caused harm. The officer's eyes narrowed, their questions rapid and cold. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but steady. She would never do that. Yet suspicion hung thick in the air. Why were they so quick to assume the worst? My parents joined in, their words slicing through me as they sided against us. My grandfather stood apart, silent, his expression unreadable. Something was terribly wrong. Everything had spiraled out of control, but the truth was, somewhere out there waiting to be found. Just hours before, it had been a simple family celebration. Now my daughter's innocence was being questioned, and so was mine. Have you ever faced a moment when your own family turned against you, when the truth felt impossibly far away? Share your story below. Where did it happen, and how did you respond? Let's talk about those moments of betrayal and the power of truth to change everything. It was a scorching July afternoon when we gathered in Grandpa's backyard for a family party. I'm Joanna Myers, trying to smile through the knot in my stomach. The air buzzed with uneasy laughter, the kind that hides sharp edges. Grandpa, the quiet patriarch, had called us together to discuss his will, a topic that turned every glance into silent calculation. His modern Reno home with its wide sunlit yard was the prize everyone wanted. I stood near the picnic table, sipping lemonade, watching my daughter play alone beneath an oak tree, her small hands stacking colored blocks into wobbly towers. My sister-in-law, always craving attention, cradled her 5-month-old son while basking in my parents' praise. "He's got your brother's eyes," Mom cooed, brushing past my daughter without a glance. Dad nodded, adding, "A strong boy just like his father." Their favoritism stung, but I'd long grown used to it. My brother, the golden child, could do no wrong, and his wife absorbed every ounce of their approval. My daughter, 7 and tender-hearted, felt the neglect. She added another block, her lips pressed tight, unnoticed by the adults fawning over the baby. I caught my sister-in-law's gaze, her smile thin and cutting. "Still crunching numbers for that little accounting job, Joanna?" she asked, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Must be hard scraping by." I forced a laugh, my cheeks burning. She knew about our struggles. Daniel, my husband, had been working overtime as a construction engineer just to keep us afloat. That morning, I'd spoken with a banker about a loan to buy a small house, a dream that seemed to drift further away with every condescending word. Her remarks weren't casual, they were calculated reminders of her place above me in the family pecking order. Daniel stood beside me, his hand brushing mine, sensing my unease. "Ignore her," he whispered, steady but low. I nodded, though the tension gnawed at me. The backyard filled with folding chairs, and the scent of grilled burgers felt like a stage for a play no one wanted to perform. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, his weathered hands folded, his gaze scanning us all. I wondered what he saw, a fractured family pretending to be whole. I hoped he'd recognize my daughter's gentle heart, our quiet resilience, but doubt lingered. My sister-in-law's laughter rang out again, loud, rehearsed, and hollow, as she adjusted her son's tiny hat. "He's already so smart," she bragged, drawing another round of smiles from Mom and Dad. My daughter glanced up, searching for me. I waved, trying to reassure her, but her shoulders slumped. She returned to her blocks, building in silence. I longed to scoop her up, to protect her from the unfairness, but I stayed put, trapped in the role of the polite daughter-in-law. The talk shifted to Grandpa's house. Its worth whispered in cautious tones. "It's prime real estate," Dad said, eyes gleaming. Mom nodded, her voice low. "Your brother deserves it after all he's done." I bit my tongue, the words, "What about us?" stuck in my throat. My sister-in-law chimed in, her tone airy but sharp. "Some people just aren't cut out for big responsibilities." Her glance flicked toward me, and I felt Daniel tense beside me. I squeezed his hand, signaling him to stay calm. We couldn't afford a confrontation, not yet. Grandpa cleared his throat, drawing every eye. "We'll discuss the will soon," he said, his voice gravelly but firm. The table fell silent, forks hovering midair. I looked at my daughter, still alone, her blocks now a crumbling castle. My heart ached for her, for us. The party dragged on, each smile more strained than the last. My sister-in-law's barbs grew sharper, her confidence unshaken. She thought she had this in the bag. Grandpa's trust, my parents' loyalty, the house. I kept my face composed, though inside I was bracing for a storm I could feel coming. When I waved to my daughter again, her small hand lifted in return, a flicker of hope in her eyes. As I chatted with Daniel under the oak tree, my sister-in-law's scream shattered the party's easy hum. She bolted across the backyard, her face flushed, clutching her son tightly to her chest. "Emma did it. She hurt my son," she shouted, pointing at my daughter, who stood frozen beside her pile of blocks. My stomach dropped. Emma hurt her 5-month-old cousin. I couldn't believe it. My 7-year-old, with her gentle hands and shy smile, would never do such a thing. I rushed to her side, kneeling on the grass. "Sweetie, what happened?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the panic rising inside me. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her small frame trembling. "I didn't, Mommy," she whispered, shaking her head. "I didn't touch him." I pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat flutter against my chest. My sister-in-law loomed over us, her voice sharp. She pushed his rocker. "He fell because of her." The accusation sliced through me. I looked at the baby in her arms, his tiny face scrunched but unharmed. The rocker lay tipped on its side, a soft blanket tangled nearby. Something didn't add up. Mom stepped forward, her lips tight. "Emma's always been jealous," she said coldly. "She's not used to sharing attention." Dad crossed his arms. "Kids act out, Joanna. You know how she gets." Their words hit harder than the scream. My own parents siding against their granddaughter without hesitation. I stood shielding Emma. "That's not true," I said, my voice trembling. "She's not like that." But their eyes stayed fixed on my sister-in-law, their trust unwavering. Grandpa pushed through the crowd, his cane tapping the ground. "Everyone calm down," he said, his tone firm but weary. "Let's figure this out before pointing fingers." My sister-in-law ignored him, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she announced, her thumb already dialing. I stared, disbelief rooting me to the spot. "You're what I asked," my voice rising. "This is a family matter." But she turned away, speaking rapidly into the phone, her words a blur of accusations. Daniel crouched beside Emma, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Stay with her," I told him, my thoughts spinning. I needed answers. If the baby was hurt, we had to know how badly. I sprinted toward the house, weaving past picnic tables and startled guests. Inside, the cool air of Grandpa's living room did little to steady me. I grabbed my phone from my purse, fumbling for the pediatrician's number. My hands shook as I dialed, praying for clarity. The line rang each second, stretching endlessly. My sister-in-law's voice echoed in my mind, bitter and relentless. Why was she so quick to blame Emma? The way Mom and Dad sided with her felt like betrayal. Years of favoritism suddenly laid bare. I thought of Emma's tearful denial, her small voice trembling with certainty. She wasn't lying. I knew my daughter. But the doubt in everyone's eyes gnawed at me. What if they believed the worst? What if this broke us apart? The pediatrician's assistant answered, her voice calm. "Is the child responsive?" she asked. I explained what little I knew. The rocker tipped the baby, crying but awake. Bring him in if there's swelling or lethargy, she advised. Otherwise, monitor him closely. I thanked her, my mind still racing. I needed to get back to Emma to make sure she was okay. Daniel was with her, but I hated leaving her in that chaos. As I hung up, I looked out the window. The backyard was a blur of faces, my sister-in-law gesturing wildly, Mom and Dad nodding along. Grandpa stood apart, his shoulders heavy, trying to keep the peace. I drew a deep breath, steeling myself. This wasn't just about a tipped rocker, it was something deeper, something uglier. I had to protect Emma no matter what. My heart pounded as I set the phone down. Minutes later, police lights flickered across Grandpa's backyard, casting long shadows over the picnic tables. 2 officers stepped out of their cruiser, one older with a hardened gaze, the other younger, notepad ready. My daughter clung to me, her small frame trembling, tears soaking her shirt. I knelt beside her and whispered, "It's okay, Emma." But my pulse raced. The crowd parted as the officers approached, their boots crunching on the grass. My sister-in-law stood rigid, her son cradled protectively, outrage etched across her face. She pushed his rocker, she shouted, pointing at Emma. She was jealous and tipped it over. "Hurt my boy." Her voice rang sharp and deliberate, every word aimed to wound. The older officer raised a hand, signaling for quiet, then turned to Emma. "Sweetheart, can you tell us what happened?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. Emma shrank behind me, her sobs muffled. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. I squeezed her hand, my chest tightening with fear and disbelief. Mom stepped forward, arms crossed. "She's been acting strange all day," she said, eyes sliding away from mine. "Always staring at the baby with this odd look." Dad nodded. "Kids get jealous, officer. She's not used to sharing attention." Their words cut deeper than I could have imagined, my own parents doubting Emma without hesitation. I stood, pulling her closer. "That's ridiculous," I snapped. "She adores her cousin. Why are you all so quick to assume the worst?" My sister-in-law's eyes narrowed. "I saw her near the rocker," she insisted. "She hovered there. Then it tipped over. What else could it be?" I shook my head, my thoughts spinning. Her story was too smooth, too rehearsed. I glanced at the baby, still in her arms, fussing but unharmed. The rocker lay nearby, tilted but intact. Something didn't add up, but I couldn't see what yet. Grandpa lifted his cane, his voice cutting through the noise. "Enough," he said firmly. "We don't know everything. Let's find out the truth before blaming a child." His words steadied me, a flicker of hope in the chaos. The younger officer jotted notes, glancing at Emma. "Did anyone else see it happen?" he asked the guests. They shuffled uneasily, heads shaking. The silence was deafening. My sister-in-law seized the moment. No one else was close enough. It was her. Daniel stepped forward, jaw set. "That's not true," he said evenly. "Emma was playing with her blocks, nowhere near that rocker." I nodded, relief washing through me. "He's right," I added, meeting the older officer's gaze. "My daughter would never hurt anyone." But their skeptical eyes said otherwise, the weight of suspicion pressing down on us. I turned to my sister-in-law, keeping my voice steady despite the anger rising inside me. "Why are you so certain it was Emma?" I demanded. "What did you actually see?" She hesitated for a split second before regaining composure. "I told you she was right there." She shot back, defensive now. Mom cut in, "Joanna, stop making excuses." Dad's frown deepened, his silence louder than words. Their alliance with her felt suffocating. Then it struck me. Stephen Larson, Grandpa's neighbor, had a security camera pointed toward his backyard just over the low fence. Maybe it caught something. I turned to Grandpa, my voice urgent. "Your neighbor Stephen, doesn't he have a camera facing his yard? Could it see ours?" Grandpa's brow furrowed, then he nodded slowly. "It might," he said. "He keeps it running all the time." The officers exchanged a look. "We'll verify that," the older one said, jotting it down. My sister-in-law's expression flickered, confidence slipping for the first time. Mom and Dad shifted uncomfortably, their certainty wavering. I held Emma close, her small hand warm in mine. That camera might be our lifeline, the key to proving her innocence. Still unease gnawed at me. What if it revealed something worse? I forced the thought away, focusing on my daughter's tear-streaked face. The younger officer turned back to the group. "Let's stay calm," he said firmly. "We'll speak with everyone separately." I nodded, my resolve solidifying. I wasn't letting them pin this on Emma. My sister-in-law's accusations, my parents' blind faith. It all felt orchestrated, a script I hadn't known I was in. Grandpa's steady gaze met mine, a silent reminder of truth and fairness. I held Emma's hand, praying the truth would finally come to light. With Emma's sobs still echoing in my head, I turned to Grandpa for answers. "Your neighbor's camera," I said, my voice urgent but low. Could it have caught what happened in the yard? Grandpa's weathered face tightened, his eyes shifting toward the fence that divided the two properties. "Stephen Larson's setup," he said, nodding slowly. "It's got a wide angle, might have caught our side." He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "We had a falling out over that fence last year, but it's worth a try." I glanced at Daniel, his expression set with quiet determination. "Let's go," he said, brushing my hand. We left Emma with Grandpa, who stood firm despite the tension still rippling through the backyard. My sister-in-law's accusations rang in my ears, sharp and relentless, but I forced them aside. The truth felt close, I could almost reach it. We crossed the lawn, the late afternoon sun stretching long shadows ahead of us, and stepped onto Stephen's driveway. His house, a neat ranch style much like Grandpa's, sat only a few yards away, a small camera perched above the garage. I knocked, heart hammering. Stephen opened the door, his broad frame filling the doorway, his brow furrowed. "Joanna, Daniel," he said cautiously. I swallowed, knowing his history with Grandpa wasn't exactly friendly. "Stephen, we need your help." I began, keeping my voice steady. "Something happened at the party, my daughter's being accused of hurting her cousin. Could we check your camera?" His gaze softened at Emma's mention, her tearful face clearly still fresh in his mind from earlier glimpses over the fence. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "That argument with your grandfather wasn't pretty," he muttered. "But for the kid. All right?" He stepped aside, motioning us in. Relief swept through me, though dread still coiled in my stomach. What if the footage showed something I didn't want to see? I shoved the thought away, clinging to Emma's innocence. Stephen led us through his cluttered living room, strewn with tech manuals and half-built drones, into a small office. A computer sat on a messy desk, its screen blank. Daniel stood close beside me, his calm presence steadying my nerves. "Thank you, Stephen," he said firmly. Our neighbor grunted and powered up the system. "The camera's got a clear view over the fence," he explained, clicking through folders. "Records, everything in high def." My pulse quickened. This was it, our one chance to clear Emma's name. I thought of her small hands gripping those blocks, her tearful insistence that she hadn't done anything. My sister-in-law's rush to accuse her, my parents' blind support. It all felt deliberate. Stephen pulled up a file marked with the current timestamp. "This should cover it," he said, his fingers poised above the keyboard. I leaned forward, barely breathing. The screen lit up, showing Grandpa's backyard, the picnic tables, the oak tree where Emma had been playing. The angle was perfect, capturing the corner where the baby's rocker had stood. I gripped Daniel's arm, hope and dread colliding inside me. "Can you play it?" I whispered. He nodded and hit play. The video rolled, silent but crystal clear. I scanned every frame, desperate for the truth. My thoughts raced. What if it missed the moment? What if it proved the worst? I forced those fears down, hanging on to what I knew: my daughter was innocent. Stephen paused, suddenly pointing at the screen. "There's the rocker," he said, zooming in. My heart thudded, every second stretching longer than the last. "The police should see this," Daniel said steadily. I nodded my eyes, never leaving the monitor. Stephen picked up his phone, dialing the officers still at Grandpa's place. "They'll want a copy," he said, matter-of-factly. I was grateful. Despite his old feud with Grandpa, he'd stepped up. The air in the room felt heavy. Everything hinged on this footage. My sister-in-law's accusations, my parents' betrayal, the officer's doubt, all of it could unravel if the truth played out on that screen. A few minutes later, the older officer arrived, notepad still in hand. "You found something?" he asked, stepping inside. Stephen gestured to the computer. "Footage from my camera," he said. "Covers their yard." The officer nodded, his expression unreadable. I stood motionless, fingers clasped tight. This was it, our moment of truth. Fear gnawed at me. What if I was wrong? What if Emma had been closer to the rocker than I realized? Her tear-streaked face flashed in my mind, her trembling voice saying I didn't do anything. I had to believe her. Daniel rested a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It'll be okay," he murmured. I nodded, though my pulse still raced. The officer leaned closer to the screen, studying the feed. Stephen adjusted the monitor, ensuring the view was clear. My mind drifted back to the backyard, Mom and Dad's quick judgment, my sister-in-law's certainty. Something about her story didn't fit, and I prayed this footage would prove it. The screen flickered to life. In Stephen's dim office, we crowded around his flickering monitor. The video played, and the person on screen wasn't my daughter. It was Lorraine. My breath caught as the footage unfolded, clear as day. My sister-in-law, her face taut with purpose, carried a heavy toy box from the picnic table. She glanced around, then placed it on the edge of her son's rocker. The frame tilted, and the baby slipped onto the grass with a wail. Emma, my sweet girl, darted from her blocks under the oak tree, her small hands grabbing the rocker's edge, trying to steady it. She hadn't caused the fall, she'd tried to save him. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Daniel's grip on my shoulder tightened, his jaw tense. Stephen leaned back, eyes wide. "That's not what she said," he muttered. The older officer beside us scribbled in his notepad, his expression hardening. My heart pounded, a storm of relief and fury surging through me. Emma was innocent, but Lorraine, my own sister-in-law, had set her up. The truth hit like a slap. She'd orchestrated this to smear us, to turn Grandpa against my family. The officer paused the video, rewinding to the moment Lorraine placed the box. "This changes everything," he said. His tone clipped. He turned to Stephen. "Can you make a copy?" Stephen nodded, already pulling a USB drive from his desk. I stared at the frozen frame. Lorraine's calculated glance burned into my mind. She'd planned this to paint Emma as reckless, to make us look unfit before Grandpa's decision on the will. The house, his prized Reno home, was her goal, and she'd gambled with her own son's safety to get it. I turned to Daniel, my voice trembling with rage. "She lied to everyone," I said. "She wanted Grandpa to cut us out." He nodded, eyes dark with anger. "We need to show him," he said, voice steady but fierce. I pictured Mom and Dad, their quick support for Lorraine, their dismissal of Emma. Their silence now felt like a confession. They'd been so eager to believe her, so ready to turn on us. The betrayal cut deep. Stephen handed the officer the USB drive. "It's all there," he said firmly. The officer nodded, motioning to his partner outside. "We'll take it from here," he said. "The girl's not at fault." Relief washed over me, though anger still burned. Emma, only 7, had been dragged through this nightmare for nothing. I thought of her tearful face, her trembling voice, insisting she hadn't done it. She'd told the truth, and only Daniel and Grandpa had believed her. We stepped out of Stephen's house, the evening air cool against my flushed skin. The officer led the way back to Grandpa's yard, the USB drive in his pocket. My sister-in-law stood near the picnic tables, arms crossed, her face smug, until she saw us. Her eyes flicked to the officer, then to me, and fear crossed her features. Mom and Dad stood nearby, their earlier confidence gone. Grandpa leaned on his cane, his gaze heavy with disappointment. The officer held up the drive. "We've got footage," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "It shows what really happened." My sister-in-law froze, lips parting with no words. The crowd murmured, eyes darting between her and the officer. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the fury inside. "You put that box on the rocker," I said, locking eyes with her. "You let your son fall to frame my daughter." Her face paled, her hands trembling, but she didn't deny it. Mom shifted uneasily. "That can't be right," she murmured, though her tone lacked conviction. Dad looked away, shoulders slumping. Their blind loyalty to Lorraine crumbled, and the weight of their mistake hung in the silence. Grandpa raised a hand, quieting the whispers. "I want to see it," he said, his voice low but firm. The officer nodded, promising to set up a viewing inside. I glanced at Emma, still curled up beside Grandpa. She deserved better than this. Anger flared as the pieces clicked together. Lorraine's snide remarks, her attempts to isolate us at the party, her quick accusation it was all for the house. She wanted Grandpa to see us as unworthy to secure her and my brother's claim to his legacy. Her scheme had failed, but at what cost? Her son's cries, Emma's tears, our family's trust, all shattered for greed. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to confront her outright. The officer turned to me. "Your daughter's clear," he said firmly. "We'll handle the rest." I nodded, gratitude and fury mixing in my chest. Emma was safe. Her name cleared, but the damage remained. Lorraine's silence. Mom and Dad's averted gazes, they all knew the truth now. Grandpa's steady presence gave me strength, but the fracture in our family felt wider than ever. I had to protect Emma and rebuild what was broken. 2 days later, Grandpa called us back to his quiet living room. The air felt heavy, the kind of stillness that follows a storm. I stood beside Daniel, my daughter, clutching my hand, her eyes still shadowed from the ordeal. Grandpa sat in his armchair, his face etched with a mix of sorrow and resolve. Across from us, my sister-in-law sat stiffly, her son asleep in her arms. Mom and Dad lingered near her, their faces pale as they avoided my gaze. The truth revealed by Stephen's video hung between us, a silent weight none of us could escape. Grandpa cleared his throat, his voice steady but lined with disappointment. "I've seen the footage," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. What was done to Emma was unforgivable, his eyes fixed on my sister-in-law, sharp and unyielding. "You put your own child at risk to manipulate me and to damage Joanna's family." She flinched, her lips parting, but no defense came. I clenched my fists, the memory of her lies, her deliberate attempt to frame my daughter still burning through me. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." Her apology sounded hollow, a weak attempt to save face. I shook my head, my tone cold. "You meant to hurt us," I said. "You wanted Grandpa to see us as unfit so you could take his house for yourself." Her eyes dropped, silence confirming everything. Daniel's hand rested on my shoulder, his quiet steadiness keeping me from unraveling. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "We didn't know," she said, wringing her hands. "We thought she was telling the truth." Dad nodded, his tone defensive. "We were just trying to protect the baby." Their excuses cut deep, as painful as Lorraine's deceit. "You chose her side without hesitation," I said, my voice rising. "You turned against Emma, your own granddaughter." Their faces fell, but I felt no pity. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't us. Grandpa raised a hand, silencing everyone. "I've made my decision," he said firmly. "This house, my home, goes to Joanna, Daniel, and Emma." My breath caught relief flooding through me. "You've shown honesty," he continued, looking at me, "and love for each other even through this chaos. That's what matters." Emma's small hand tightened around mine, her eyes lighting up for the first time in days. I pulled her close, tears stinging my eyes. This was more than a home. It was a new beginning for my daughter, a chance to rebuild. My sister-in-law's face crumpled, her shoulders slumping. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance, their silence heavier than ever. They had backed the wrong side and now had to live with it. I looked at them torn between anger and sorrow. "We're done," I said firmly. "I can't trust you anymore. Not after this." Mom's eyes widened, a flicker of regret crossing her face, but I turned away. Daniel nodded beside me, his expression mirroring my resolve. Emma deserved better, and so did we. Grandpa rose slowly, leaning on his cane. "I hope you all learn from this," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "Family isn't about scheming or taking sides, it's about truth." His words hung in the air, final and heavy. My sister-in-law clutched her son tighter, her eyes fixed on the floor. Mom and Dad said nothing, their earlier excuses swallowed by shame. I felt a pang of loss for the family we once were, but the need to protect my own outweighed everything else. We stepped into the hallway where boxes waited for our move. Daniel had already started planning his engineer's mind, mapping out repairs for Grandpa's house. Our house now. Emma tugged at my hand, her voice soft but hopeful. "Will I have my own room?" she asked. I smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. "The biggest one," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her smile, fragile but real, made every battle worth it. The next morning, we began packing, the weight of the past days easing with each box we sealed. Daniel sorted tools, already sketching designs for a backyard play area for Emma. I organized our things, picturing her laughter filling the house where Deceit had once lived. The place with its wide windows and warm walls felt like a promise, a space for healing and peace. I thought of Grandpa's faith in us, his choice to value love over manipulation. It gave me strength, even as the rift with Mom, Dad, and my sister-in-law remained. I paused, holding a photo of Emma from last summer, her grin wide beneath the oak tree. She had endured so much, yet her heart remained pure. I vowed to protect that light, to give her the safety she deserved. The betrayal had scarred us, but it had also revealed who truly stood by us. Daniel, Emma, and I, we were enough. As I taped the last box shut, a quiet determination settled over me. This was our new beginning, built on truth. I closed the door, ready for a new start. As we unpacked in Grandpa's house, Emma's quiet smile masked the scars of that day. The new walls, warm with afternoon light, offered promise, yet my daughter's eyes carried a weight no 7-year-old should bear. Boxes filled the living room, each one a step toward our fresh start, but the echoes of betrayal lingered. Daniel sorted books beside me, his steady hands a reminder of the strength we'd rebuilt together. This house, now ours, was more than a gift. It was a refuge for Emma, a place to heal. Word soon spread that my sister-in-law had been sentenced to community service for lying to the police. The ruling, though lenient, branded her with shame. She had gambled her son's safety to manipulate Grandpa, and now she faced the consequences alone. Her husband, my brother, faded quietly from our lives, their family reduced to a distant shadow. I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache for what was lost. Her deceit had fractured us beyond repair. Mom and Dad, too, withdrew into silence. Their quick judgment and blind loyalty to her lies cost them Grandpa's trust and mine. He rarely mentioned them anymore, his disappointment clear whenever he turned conversations toward Emma's future instead. I couldn't bring myself to reach out. Their betrayal, siding against my daughter without hesitation, was a wound too deep to forgive. Family, I'd learned, wasn't defined by blood but by loyalty, and theirs had failed. Emma struggled most of all. The accusation had left invisible bruises, her once bright laughter now hesitant. We found Dr. Susan Keller, a kind-eyed therapist with a small office nearby. She worked patiently with Emma, helping her unravel the fear and doubt rooted in that day. "She's strong," Dr. Keller told me after one session, her voice calm but reassuring. "But she needs time." I nodded, my heart heavy, as I watched Emma draw in her sketchbook, her pictures darker than before. I vowed to give her that time to rebuild her faith in the world. Daniel threw himself into restoring the house, fixing creaky floors and painting Emma's room a soft blue she'd chosen. "This is ours now," he said, brushing sawdust from his hands, his smile gentle. I marveled at his calm, his ability to see past the pain toward a future here. We hung a swing in the backyard beneath the old oak tree where Emma had once played before everything fell apart. Her first laugh on that swing, clear and unburdened, felt like victory. I held on to that sound, letting it steady me. Grandpa visited often, his cane tapping a familiar rhythm on the porch. He'd sit with Emma telling stories from his childhood, his eyes softening each time she giggled. His decision to give us the house wasn't merely generosity, it was his way of protecting her, of ensuring we had solid ground to rebuild upon. "You're my family," he told me once, his voice firm. "Always will be." His words carried weight, a reminder that trust once shattered was hard to restore, but his faith in us endured. The town still whispered about the incident, but I tuned them out. My focus was Emma, Daniel, and this home. We planted flowers along the fence, a quiet act of reclaiming our space. Each bloom felt like defiance against the lies that once threatened to break us. I thought of my sister-in-law sweeping park paths in her orange vest, her ambition reduced to penance. I thought of Mom and Dad, their silence a self-imposed exile. Their greed and haste had cost them everything: family, respect, connection. One night, as I tucked Emma into bed, her small hand curled around mine. "Am I still in trouble?" she asked softly. My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart," I said, stroking her hair. "You did nothing wrong. You're safe now." She nodded, her eyes heavy but trusting. That fragile trust, slowly mending, became my reason to keep going. Dr. Keller's sessions were helping, but love hours was her true medicine. Standing in the kitchen one evening, I looked out at the backyard, the swing still swaying gently under the oak tree. The pain of that day lingered, but so did our strength. Sometimes truth costs everything, yet gives back what matters most: family. I'd lost my parents, my brother, his wife, but I'd gained clarity. Greed and pride had unraveled them, leaving only regret. For us, truth carved a path forward, painful but real. The lesson was clear: family isn't built on blood alone, but on choices. Theirs tore us apart, but ours, rooted in love for Emma, held us together. As we settled into this home, I knew we'd carry the scars, but also hope. Emma's laughter, Daniel's steady presence, Grandpa's unwavering trust, they were our foundation, stronger than any house. I watched Emma play, her laughter echoing through the rooms, our new home's true heartbeat.